Yeah, I can. So again, thank you all for being here, and good evening, good night, good morning, depending on the location that you're in. It's my pleasure to introduce you to our esteemed professional who has made significant contributions to the cannabis industry. And join me in welcoming Sarah, the quality manager of a processing lab and manufacturing areas at VidaCann, which is based in Jacksonville, Florida. With a remarkable background spanning 15 years in the manufacturing quality, Sarah brings a wealth of expertise and experience to the table. Having joined the cannabis industry a year ago, she has swiftly become an integral part of VidaCann's operations, ensuring the highest quality of standards throughout the cultivation site and manufacturing areas. Sarah also holds an impressive array of certifications, including the HACCP certification, the Quality Engineer certification, and certification as a lead auditor for ISO 9001 and ISO 22000. These certifications reflect her commitment to excellence and her deep understanding of quality systems and regulatory compliance. We are privileged to have Sarah share insights and knowledge on the functions of a quality system, their components, and how they apply to regulatory compliance in the cannabis industry. Her expertise will shine light on the common quality elements required to meet diverse regulatory requirements in different states. So if you could please join me in a warm welcome to Sarah as we embark on this captivating journey into the world of quality systems and the cannabis manufacturing and facilities. Sarah, I'm gonna hand it over to you. We can start.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here. This is probably my favorite subject. I could probably talk for days. We've only got about 45 minutes, I hear, so I'll try to keep it short and sweet. So as she said, I'm the quality manager for VidaCann. I actually oversee from where cultivation ends forward, up until it gets ready for distribution. So processing, packaging, so that is where this is going to cover. So a good quality management system shouldn't just exist to cover your compliance minimums. It's a much bigger picture than just checking off the boxes. The intent of it is to manage the quality of what you're producing every day. So the driving force should not just be, the regulatory restrictions and the compliance standards, but making sure that you're producing things the way you should be. So we'll go through GMPs is a huge component of this. We'll go over, like she mentioned, HACCP, HACCP. We'll touch on that a little bit because that is, well, fantastic tool. We'll go through the QMS, Quality Management System, and the roles of GMP and QMS in the bigger picture of making compliance coverage. All right, let me go back. Sorry. Okay. So quality management systems, quality control methods, they've been in manufacturing industries for decades. So I have a background in quite a few different industries, beverage, food, prepackaged foods, condiments. You can apply quality management to all of those things. And if you're using the right methodology, the result is going to be the same. You're going to meet your compliance. You're going to have a well-structured quality system that covers all your bases. It's going to apply to manufactured goods, food, pharmaceuticals, any industry can apply this. Regulatory bodies have been established to review your programs. So they are the basis of the minimums, but their purpose is to make sure that your end results and your process is in place to ensure that you're getting good quality products, whatever it is you're producing. The issue that we see with applying these ideas to cannabis, it's so fractured. It's so widespread. It's you have the regs that cover all of cultivation. You have the different states with their own requirements. You also have so many products. I mean, is it a cosmetic? Is it, you know, with tablets? Is it medicine? You have flour, agriculture. So you kind of go all over the place, edibles, food. So it's really hard to determine what it is you should be focusing on, which standard you should select to cover your products. Right. Right, so we'll go through GMPs. Like I said, good manufacturing practices. It's a huge basis for any quality management system. Even though a lot of things can vary depending on what standard you pick, some of them are across the board, just necessary in running a quality organization. They're a necessary part of your quality management. Okay, so like I said, GMPs, good manufacturing practices. A lot of the times they will refer to them as CGMPs, current good manufacturing practices. The idea being that you know, you're always updating, you're always changing. It is the current regulation, your current set of goals or set of guidelines for meeting your goals. It has a lot of different components, a lot of different requirements. If you're looking at what the actual regulations are, if you wanted to look up what they were, it's the CFR, Code of Federal Regulations, Title 21. The specifics are 110 is just general fit for human consumption. 111 is for dietary supplements, and 117 is for food. So just starting out, this over here, just starting out, hygiene. Obviously, this is going to be a big deal. Anything coming into your facility is going to potentially come into contact with anything that you're making. So the easiest thing to control, you know, training of your employees. You have to make sure that, you know, their clothes are clean, they are clean, they're coming in, we're washing hands like we should be. What are your uniform requirements? Normally, we don't want short sleeves. You don't want anybody making food with certain, you know, body parts hanging out. Got to wear closed-toed shoes. Gloves, hair nets, things to keep foreign material, contaminants out of the product. Disease control. You don't want anybody coming to work when they're sick and handling something that somebody could put in their mouth. Jewelry policy. That would be really cute if you opened an edible and somebody's earring was in there. Training. You want to make sure everybody understands what it is that they're supposed to be doing, what the procedures are, what the expectations are. And then adequate supervision. So are you making sure these things are happening, or are we just kind of writing it down and letting it happen? All right. Just blocking all my stuff. Okay. Building and facilities. So if you're looking at how your building is put together, how is your facility put together? Do your doors close all the way? Do you have adequate protection against, you know, pests and anything could get in there? Do you have adequate ventilation? You know, your walls are intact, they're in good condition. Everything is set up in a way that you're not going to have all these extra contamination issues. And then incoming materials. So you want to make sure anybody that you're purchasing things from, they are a valid supplier, a trusted supplier. Some of the ways you can do that is just by, you know, talking to your rep. A lot of the times you will communicate with one representative of the company and go through that person. And most of the times they will have certificates from ISO, from these certifying bodies, saying that the products they produce are acceptable for sale. So you want to make sure anything coming into the building is not going to bring in contamination or issues. It's good quality. You want to make sure your building is good quality, and you want to make sure your employees aren't tracking anything in that they shouldn't. So just by doing those three things, you're covering a wide array of problems that could happen. So you're preventing a lot of issues from happening. There's certain criteria for ingredients. If you got a bag of contaminated sugar and used it to produce your products, everybody would have a very bad day. So we get what they call COCs or COAs, certificates of analysis from the company, saying that we tested this lot of sugar we have given you, and we certified that it's going to meet all the standards for what you're going to do with it. Sanitation, that's another big one. So as you're producing products, you want to make sure your facility is clean, that you have a designated area that you're putting chemicals that you wouldn't want to come into contact with something that someone's going to put in their body. You clean regularly. One of the biggest things for if you're making edible products, for example, we have chocolate, we have soft chews. Chocolate has allergens. It has milk and soy allergen. So someone who would avoid milk products because they know they're allergic to them might not avoid soft chews, because why would you expect milk or soy to be in the soft chews? So we have to clean in between things that could cause cross-contamination, and we have programs in place to make sure that our cleaning is effective enough to remove those things. You should also go through annually and make sure that, are you having micro issues, contamination issues, any problems, so you can review your test results, your products, and make sure that what you're doing is effective. All right. Work practices. This can vary depending on what your requirements are, but just as a general guideline, where you're storing your ingredients, you're storing your packaging materials, what you're using, where you're storing your finished products, the maintenance of your equipment and utensils. One of the big things that I think a lot of people forget about is there can be a huge harborage point with utensils. If you have a scoop that has a tiny little nook where things can get into, where it's not easily cleaned, so you want most stainless steel or easily cleanable utensils or equipment that can be broken down and cleaned properly. Prevention of foreign material inclusion. So you want to make sure you're not storing, like we don't store allergens above non-allergens. You put those on the bottom. That way, if a bag happens to rip open, you're not going to risk cross-contamination. So there's a lot of steps that you can take to prevent issues from happening just by monitoring how you're doing things and what you're bringing into your building. So if we look at the QMS, the quality management system, GMP is going to be a part of this. It's not the entire thing. So it's taken probably a century for us to get from where we started to where we are now with quality management. Like I said, these things have been used in manufacturing for years, decades being as they are right now. With the first people to implement quality management as we know now was NASA in Pillsbury, when they were checking things to go food for the astronauts. So when they were manufacturing this stuff, they, you can't make any mistakes. You can't have any errors. They had to prevent the errors before they started. And that's where we are now we're going to have a set of standardized practices to ensure that before we manufacture, before we have to test it, all of these things are going to be in place to prevent any of the problems that we already know are possible. So these are the elements of a good quality management system. Like I said, GMP is a part of it. You want to have your processes set up in such a way that you're going to avoid mistakes that are going to compromise your quality. You're going to have management involvement. You're going to have, change control. Every time you change something, you need to look at what you're changing and how it's going to affect everything. You're going to document any issues that you're having and map out your facility to make sure that you've covered all your bases. So, and why is this helpful? So if you're doing things ahead of time, you're going to save money from product that you wouldn't be able to sell. Complaints from customers, not only are they returning it, but especially now with social media, there's a lot of bad press that comes from, I had this product and, the quality of it was really poor. I didn't like it. Everybody hears about that. And then, legal fees and fines for putting out compromised product. So, and then when you have documented processes in place for all of these things, you're preventing them before they can even occur. Okay. So as I said, we have our elements of a functional QMS, quality management system, hazard control, change control, document control, and training. So this is where HACCP comes in. Stands for Hazard Analysis and Critical Control Point. This was the element developed by NASA and Pillsbury. I believe, yes. So basically, when you're instituting a HACCP, what you're looking for are all your failure points, all your potential failure points in a process. So the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to map out your process from start to finish, every single action that happens from start to finish, every, even processes that happen some of the time, things that come back, rework, things like that, you're going to include that in there. And every single step you're going to go through and you're going to say, what hazard can occur here? And depending on how, how severe the risk is, how likely it is to occur, how problematic it could be, then you're going to look at it and say, we haven't covered this enough. We don't have something in place to prevent this serious problem from happening. And so then you're going to put a correction in there. You're going to put a control point, something that you can check periodically to make sure that whatever risk that is not happening. Your control is in place. You're preventing this issue from happening. You're monitoring it at a certain frequency. Everyone knows what to do when there's a failure. And you can look at, in many other industries, you can look at things like metal detection or temperature controls or things like that to avoid, foreign material or micro issues. And the whole idea of this is that you're going to reduce all of your risks to an acceptable level. So you're either going to eliminate them or you're going to reduce them to where you can control them better. Right. Change control. So changes are always going to happen. All industries are in constant flux. You have new products, new flavors, new this, new that. So you're always going to have new things coming in, or you should. So you should have a program in place that's going to manage this change. If you're bringing in a new piece of equipment, how often does it need to be cleaned? How do we take it apart? Does it need replacement parts? What does it need to run properly so that you don't have a breakdown or you don't have an issue? And just looking at suppliers, who are we going to get these materials from? Do we need to go through and approve a new supplier? So just bringing up change control or new product development policies to make sure that you have any new products or changes to existing products covered. And whenever you're looking at a team to go over these things, like a HACCP team, change control, any kind of management team, it should never be just one department. It should never just be me in my office all by myself coming up with these things. It should be everyone together. That way, production can say, well, don't forget about this element. This is very important. We need to have this in place. So if you have everybody coming together to work on it, make sure everyone understands what the expectations are, you're going to have a better result when you have that new product launch or you have that change put in place. All right. Document control. If we ever wanted to have me back, I could do 45 minutes just on document control. So I will try to speak quickly about it. Document control is the single most important thing for any quality management system. This is how you're going to document how you're covering all your bases, how you're meeting all the requirements for any regulatory. It's going to include all your SOPs for how you do everything you do every day, all your training materials for your employees, any policy that you have, every form that you document. So each step that you have should have a full procedure. anything that you do, you should be able to snag anybody, put the paper in their hand, and they should be able to follow that procedure and replicate whatever result. So you should have very detailed procedures on how to perform all these tasks. Those guidelines, those procedures should also include, you know, what to do if there's a problem, troubleshooting, you know, how often are you checking certain things, where you're going to record any information you're going to record. And that's where you're going to include any declarations of compliance. So when you have your GMP and you're looking for what the requirements are for sanitation, you can have a sanitation policy where you detail how often you're going to clean, what chemicals you're going to use, and describe how the cleaning is going to take place. And then the forms that you use to document it. So we're going to have our procedures written. We have all our documents in place. Now we have to train on them and follow them. So just having it written down is not enough. You definitely have to involve your day-to-day. You should follow the procedure. If there is any reason why the procedure isn't being followed, you either need to change what you're doing or you need to change the procedure. I know in here, I'm the one writing the procedures. So if people in, you know, the manufacturing room say, we just simply cannot do it this way, this is how we need to do it. Okay, then we just rewrite the procedure so that it matches how we're actually doing things every day. As long as it meets your criteria, it meets your regulatory, you can really word it any way you like. And that's really the power of having a good document control program, is you can make those adjustments. One of the important things to have in your document control program is a way to make changes. It's really good to document those changes. I know we had a bit of a laugh when I first started because I made a form that you fill out when you change documentation, and we actually had to sign off the document change form for the document change form. So now that we put it in place, we won't have to do that anymore, but it's good to have a written record of when changes to documents were made. And then the biggest takeaway from all this, if it isn't written down, it didn't happen. If you didn't document that you did it, it did not occur. It's not going to hold up to an auditor. You can't just say, oh, well, we clean every Tuesday. No, you need to have a written document that says that that took place. And that brings us right to our good documentation practices. This is a real basic that probably every industry you go into, you'll have to adhere to. Everything that's written is a written record. It needs to be written in pen. It needs to be legible. It needs to be complete. So you shouldn't have a bunch of blank spaces. That's why your document control or change program is good, because if you have a bunch of empty spaces every time, you should probably just redo your form so you don't have empty spaces. No cross outs, scratch outs, write overs, and it should be completed by the person doing the task at the time that they did it. If there is a supervisor sitting down at the end of the day completing everybody's paperwork, that's not going to reflect what actually took place. And that's what you want. You want your documented records to reflect what actually happened while that product was being produced. That way, if you have issues, you can go back and look at, say, a temperature setting, or how long something sat, or, you know, any of the other criteria you're looking at. And that way, if there's a problem, do you need to let something cook longer? Do you need to, you know, turn the temperature down or adjust something to make sure that you don't have an issue again? And that's how that can kind of help support data collection for you if you're looking to solve some sort of problem. Training. So training is going to be another extremely important criteria that makes sure everybody knows what they're supposed to be doing and how it should be done. You can't really expect somebody to do a good job if you've never taught them how to do the job you're expecting. A register should be kept showing who is required to train on what. Some things everyone should have training on. Our GMP policy, everybody is required to train on. I may not need to know how to manufacture vapes. I might not need to sign off on that. If I'm, say, a quality tech or working in a different department, but anybody working in that room would. Some of the things like safety and GMP, they might require, an auditor might require or request proof of competency. So sometimes you might have to have, tests just to make sure, or you can also do observations as well to make sure that things are being followed and everyone understands what the expectations are. You should train when you hire, and then there should be periodic refresher training. Because as we said, things are changing all of the time. So you want to make sure everybody's up to date on how things should be done. Some of the smaller ones, traceability is incredibly important. You want to make sure that you know where everything is going. So let's go back to that bag of sugar. So if you end up getting a contaminated bag of sugar, and you find out once everything's said and done, you're going to want to know everywhere that you put that lot of sugar, everywhere that that product went into. So when you're looking at your record keeping, you should be able to track what lots of everything are going where, from your ingredients all the way up to your finished products. That way, if you do have some sort of an issue, you can pull it all back before anyone is affected. Effectiveness verification. So once you have everything in place, there should be steps that you're taking to make sure that it's doing what it's supposed to do. So, if you've put in a sanitation policy and you're getting micro hits on your edibles, obviously something is not working well. You should look at your test results. You should review any non-conformances that you have. And go back and analyze that and make sure that you're doing everything you need to do, and that you're not missing anything. Do you need to clean more often? Do you need to clean with something different? So we're going to look at the data that we've collected, and periodically we're going to look and make sure, okay, everything that we're doing is doing its job. And then equipment and instrument maintenance. This is a big one, because if you have scales where you're weighing out flower jars or pre-rolls or anything else that you're making, how often are those scales calibrated? How often are they checked? Are they going to the right decimal place? Are they up to the task of doing what they need to do? So there should be checks in place, depending on what the requirements are for the equipment. The manufacturer will usually tell you what you need to check. But you should be periodically checking to make sure that there's no bias, it's in good working order, and it's going to do its job. Right. So how does all this mess, I probably said about 10 of those things were very, very important. And they really are. They're, if you look at quality, more being supported by pillars of things that are essential to make it run properly. They are all dependent on each other. And they all work together to make sure that your system is working well and it stays in place. So QMS, even though it includes your GMP requirements, QMS is the tool that you're going to want to use to manage and document all of your requirements. It's also going to prove their effectiveness, which is something that an auditor is going to want to see. And making sure that it's changing as your business is changing, as your needs are changing, and just as your expectations for what your product can do are changing. And that's where we talked about the analysis of trends and data. That way you can look over everything for, say, the past year and make sure that what you're doing is effective and that what you're putting out is quality product. So if you look at your quality management system, like I said, GMPs are an important part of it. HACCP is an important part of it. And the little middle section I put, which PRPs, we didn't discuss that. I know it's alphabet soup, but PRPs are prerequisite programs. So things that you have in place already, like supplier management, pest control, they fall under both umbrellas. But the quality management system has your GMPs, your HACCP, but that also adds in management responsibility, the requirements of your customers, and any additional regulatory you might have. So this is going to cover all of it. It really makes up the bigger picture. GMPs are essential, they're important, they're what's being verified, but how do you make sure that your GMPs are implemented, they're in place, and they're doing what they're supposed to do, not just for your certification, but for your products. And then the difficulties of applying this to cannabis. So all of these are extremely essential in manufacturing. So why is it so difficult to add that in here? And the big thing is, if you look at what the requirements are for, the agricultural side of cannabis, those are different than the expectations for the manufacturing side of cannabis, just as they are different for the dispensing side of cannabis, especially in Florida. So you have all of these different inputs, but you only have one output. You have all of these different expectations, different governing bodies, and it's not really directly applicable to cannabis. Because like I said, so you have a cream, so you have a cosmetic, you have a tablet, so you have pharmaceuticals, edibles or food. You have this wide range of products. How do you decide what you're actually going to check for? How do you implement something when you're not quite sure where it falls? So I think a lot of business owners struggle to navigate, to pull all these things together and come out with a single simple system that ends up with good management of quality as a whole. Another thing is the industry is very new. So even though these things have been in place in a lot of industries for many, many years, we're just starting out. So a lot of people are developing their own systems as they go along. And then now that it's growing so rapidly, I think the perception of quality overall, not in just this industry and many other industries I've worked at as well, it tends to be perceived as an end goal. Okay, we have our certificate. Now we can all relax. But really, quality is intended to be incorporated into your everyday processes. So something that you're doing all the time. And it is good to note that quality and the quality side and the manufacturing side always do have kind of a tug of war in every industry I've worked at. So you have the folks that are, put the cases out the door, run, numbers. And then you have the people on the other side that are like, wait a minute, let's slow down and make sure that everything's being done properly. So you're always going to have that tug of war. And I think just applying these processes to the industry would give a little bit more balance. Okay, so how do you develop quality in a cannabis site? So the first thing you're going to want to do is collect all of your requirements. So every end goal you're required to do. I know we have 3 different requirements on how long we have to keep our records. So instead of dividing that up, we're going to look at the longest requirement for record retention, and we're going to go with that. So we're going to pool all of our requirements, make sure we've covered all those requirements, including any GMPs that you fall under. And then we're going to perform a hazard analysis. We're going to do our HACCP. We're going to build all of our steps. We're going to go through and analyze any hazards and figure out what our risks are. And then after that, we can put in documentation in place, not only to cover all the requirements from customers, regulatory, or anything else we want to accomplish, but we can also put in place risk management for any issues that we've discovered, any potential issues that we've discovered. Then we're going to make sure everybody's trained, everybody knows how to do their jobs, and then we can verify records and make sure that everything's being done the way that we've laid out. when we do come across issues, we can coach, we can train. Things are not going to happen overnight. So it's definitely a little by little type process. So you coach people and, show them the proper way or the way that you're expecting it to get done. And little by little, you should come up with a better result. Right. So as a summary, GMPs are important, but they are only a small part of managing quality in any manufacturing industry. Quality management encompasses compliance and regulatory needs through a well thought out documented program. And validation of these programs are key in ensuring that not only are the guidelines met, but it met on paper, but in everyday practice. So the result is not going to be just a passing audit. It's going to be a better run, better managed organization, and products that you can dispense with confidence. So quality management in the cannabis industry is going to be difficult to navigate, but we've been using these management techniques for decades, like I said, so we can definitely apply them. I put some of the references for you guys, the CFRs, that's where you're going to get your GMP regulations, Code of Federal Regulations for the different GMP requirements. Your ISO 9001, that's just a fancy word for the quality management standard of ISO. That's going to break down basically what I've told you and how to build a quality management system. And then ISO 22000 applies directly to food. And then I think we've talked about HACCP enough. Hopefully you remember what it stands for, but HACCP is also a really good reference for how to do a risk analysis on your process. And that is all. I don't know if you want to open the floor to questions.
I really want to hit the button to cue the live audience studio clap, but thank you so much, Sarah. I really do appreciate you for taking your time out today. I would like to express our sincerest gratitude for sharing your invaluable insights and expertise. And may we all strive towards a more conscious and quality management system. We did have a few questions pop up in the chat, but I'm gonna go ahead and end the recording right here. So that way